Welcome to Two Baptists and That Amish Chick, a podcast brought to you by the Butter Churn Girls. I'm Leslie.
And I'm Bethany.
And I'm Berlin. Join us for candid conversations about organized religion, the good, the bad, the ugly, and how we broke free from it while holding on to our faith in God.
In these candid conversations, you can expect to laugh, to relate, occasionally cry, and definitely hear a few cuss words.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and follow at the Butter Churn Girls on all socials. Now for this week's episode.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to dive into kind of just looking at individual stories, a piece of the past. Now we're not going to do the whole let me tell you my testimony, but we're going to dive into asking Leslie some questions about what her teenage life was like, because teenage years is a really impactful years. That's when you're kind of deciding what you are going to believe, who you're going to become as an adult. It's a really impactful time in your life. And so I feel like that was a good place to have conversations about and kind of ask questions. So Leslie, what do you feel like were some of the most impactful moments for your faith in your teen years that kind of brought you to where you are now? This could be something that triggered a deconstruction. This could be a wild thing that happened. That could be literally anything. What is highlighted in your mind from your teenage years about your faith?
Yeah. So this one's actually really interesting because it's really I think it was several years kind of in the making, right? But it all had to do with the narrative that I was taught growing up about Jesus coming back, the end times, the rapture, all of this stuff.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
Do Baptists believe that there's a rapture?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. But see, and I'm I don't even know exactly what they believe. I still couldn't tell you what exactly it is.
For me, it was the Left Behind series.
Yes.
That Left Behind series. That exactly says what they
yes.
believe.
And they were hey, this is great. Read this, whatever. Okay.
Sorry, Kirk Cameron.
I mean, Growing Pains was great, but stay in your lane.
Sorry. Kirk, if you're listening to this, now you know what you did. Sorry.
Yeah, let's get into what you did. No, and it wasn't necessarily that, because I never watched the movies until I was much older. Because I was literally just
stuck in the stay in your lane.
But I think back, and I never watched or read those. I never did any of that because I was literally so full of fear. And I think that's what the majority of my relationship with God was literally based on fear. Everything was fear-based. And I was just scared to death of hell. I was scared of God, but not as much as I was of hell. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it was always the narrative of, hey, if there's an unspoken sin, and Jesus comes back, where are you going to go? And I'm and it makes my skin crawl. And I can already feel my cheeks getting hot. So this might get more fiery than I expect. But it was all of this, the whole narrative of God's just going to decide on a whim when he wants to send Jesus back. Mm-hmm. And if I'm making the slightest mistake, I'm done for eternity. And there was a logical part of me going, this makes no sense. There's a lot of this that doesn't make any sense. But then there's still a part of me that was the loudest part going, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. And I would lay in bed at night and go, oh my gosh, what if it's tonight? God, I'm so we did talk about we talked about the intercessors and the incorrect view of that, and the wailing and travailing. That's what I was doing for my soul. I was so full of fear. And I think it eventually led to the point that I started having panic attacks, and I was on anti-anxiety medication as a 16-year-old. And so I haven't really told this story a whole lot.
Yeah, I didn't know this.
No one knows. They knew I was on anxiety med. A few friends knew I was on anti-anxiety meds in high school, and then others knew. I really think that's the only piece. Some people knew that, but mom knew it all. There was one night, I now know I was having a panic attack, but I literally was laying there going, I'm dying tonight. like I could feel it because my heart and my chest and my stomach, like everything was just like there was so much at war within me.
Mm.
Wow.
Like it was like I'm almost getting a little teary thinking back to it because it was just like I can't imagine what I put my mom through that night, because this was actually the second time it happened, and I finally was like, I'm dying tonight, and like, how dare I not tell my mom? Like I feel like I should like let her know. And so I walked in there and I was like, hey mom, and I'm like bawling, and she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I think I'm dying tonight. And she was like, what on earth? And she's like, let's go to the hospital. And I said, no, if I'm dying, I want to be at home. And I spent that night on the couch. I didn't think I was actually going to cry, but here we are.
Yeah. It's good to cry.
No, it is. And I don't think I've actually fully processed through all of this now that I'm like, I'm ready to talk about it. I'm fine with that, but I don't think I'd fully processed through a lot of it now that I'm like digging it out. But I laid on the couch that night with my mom, like just holding me, and I would like get so tense and like shake. And mom was like, no, like we're surrounded by peace. Like I remember that being like, I now can see that as one of the most, I don't know if supernatural or like just like one of the most like spirit-filled moments of like God showing up in a very physical way for me.
Yeah.
Right. Because the peace would come and I could finally rest. But it was like, I went to a doctor a couple weeks later because mom was like, listen, I think it was a panic attack. And once the panic had subsided, I was like, man, I don't know. So I went to the doctor to find out if everything was okay. And he was like, oh yeah, like here's some Zoloft and here's you like some alprazolam just in case, you know, like started just writing prescriptions, which is so, it's so funny where I am now. Cause I'm like, I don't want, I'll go to a doctor now and I'm like, I don't like your answer. I'm not doing that. But like, I took that for months, and I finally hit the point. I'm like, it is so stupid. Oh, see, here's the fiery part coming out. I can feel it. But I was like, it is so stupid that I have to have a prescription bottle to have a relationship with God.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like, it's also stupid that I have to have, like, in my mind, I was like, I don't want to have to be dependent on a pill bottle to have a normal life. And I understand that there's a lot of people who like do need medications. Like, and I don't want to tear that down if that's what
I do feel
if
like
that's
a lot
where you're
I
at.
think a lot of people do feel the same way as you though. Even if they are in that place where like,
True.
I need this right now, they still have that feeling of like, I wish I didn't.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people that will resonate with that, like that there's no shame behind that, but that there's times that you need it, but they probably have a lot of the same
100%.
emotions.
Yeah.
Like, I still think it's absolutely wild that religion led to that, right? Led to a dependence for even a short time on prescription medication, right?
Yeah.
And the Bible says he's the Prince of Peace. Well, why the hell am I not feeling it?
Yeah.
Like I think that was kind of the beginning of like the holes being shot in what I was standing on and believing in, right? Like, and those just kind of sat there for years and I just kind of ignored it. So yeah.
Do you think that was a culmination of what you've been taught, or was it a specific thing you were taught as a teenager?
I think it a little of both, right? So I think the whole hell is hot, you don't want to go there narrative was always there. It was that fear-based gospel, right? It was that fear-based salvation message. Like, you don't want to go to hell. You've touched the stove. You know it's hot. You don't want to feel like that forever. You know, and dang straight, I don't want to feel like that. And so, like, of course, I have a totally different view of absolutely every piece of this now.
Right.
Completely different. And I don't want to, we're not going to dive into that. But
at least not today.
Yeah, no, we're not going to dive into that yet. We will, but not yet. But like, it was that consistent message of like, hey, there should be a level of fear, which is a whole other conversation about like fearing God is a whole different.
Right.
There's a lot of different definitions. Yeah. I was like, there's a lot of different definitions, but then you partner that with, you know, when God's good and ready, you never know. Like, it was this like fear of the unknown. And going, oh, this is possible. Like,
and even the thing maybe that like the fear of the unknown, and you're not allowed to know, so you'll always have that fear. Like you're not
in
meant
the
to
dark.
find out.
Like I felt like it was a catch-22. Like I always felt like I was going to be cornered, that I was going to be stuck, whether that means like I'm stuck in hell for eternity, or I'm stuck here just continuing messing up in this vicious cycle that never ends, or like I abandon it all. And then I know like that was the only certainty, right? Abandoning God and everything. That was the only certainty that I felt in that point, right? Like
that you're going to go to hell.
At least I know where I'm going to go. At least I know, like I can like own that decision, right?
That's depressing.
Hence the prescriptions, right? Like it was a vicious cycle. Like I think a lot of things added up, and I don't think it was any one specific person saying any specific thing. I think it was the way it was delivered and the way I perceived it, right?
That's
like that's huge. Like because the kid next to me didn't have a problem with it. Like they didn't have a problem receiving that message, and they're like, and or maybe they did, and they just didn't like let that be known, which I didn't let it be known.
Right.
And I think
you assume that everyone else
is fine.
Well, no, they understood the same way you did. And so they must just all be feeling the same way, or they understood the same way, but they're not scared.
Yeah.
Because I know that was my experience after I've had conversations with other people about like, oh, you actually didn't, for example, my sisters didn't experience the same exact understanding as I did.
Everyone perceives things different. Like one, because we're all given different personalities, different things. Like we're going to receive information a very different way because we operate in our souls differently, right? Like whether you're logical or like very direct and will based, or if you're emotional, like you're going to hit things very different.
Right.
And I still hadn't discovered like the will side of myself, right? Like it's very there, and it was supposed to be balanced, and not only certain situations was I like in tune with that. So I was just operating out of the emotions, and it was going back crap crazy. Like, there was nothing like solid there. So it was definitely like I look back and I'm like I feel so sorry for her, but I'm like, you know what, if it wasn't for that, like God's used it for good, right? So he's given me an ear for like that fear-based gospel or message. Like, and I have a very different take on that now. I'm like, I don't kind of put up for that anymore, because I'm like, you're not going to put another kid in that position where they're laying in their bed alone, scared to death that they're going to die by themselves. Like,
that's not okay.
No.
Well, and would there have been any space, even at home, not talking about like church, but at home, would there have been the space or the safety for you as a teenager to talk about that? Like, would you even as a teenager have known like this is where the fear is coming from, or was it just like there? And
I think it was so consuming, I had no idea. But that night on the couch with Mom, I was like, I'm scared I'm gonna die. And it wasn't the fear of, it wasn't ever the death. It was the destination.
Yeah.
Because it was just such a crapshoot. Like, because I feel like the unspoken sin was so harped on. Like, you better ask for forgiveness for that unspoken sin.
But it was the unspoken sin.
You never know. Like, if there was something that you didn't ask forgiveness for, you could
so
go
they
to hell for
literally
that.
just said like
if you did something wrong and didn't realize it, and you never asked forgiveness for it, so too bad.
Like, I accidentally hurt someone's feelings. I didn't realize it happened. I didn't realize their feelings were hurt, and I didn't ask for forgiveness for it tonight. So,
wow,
yeah, and so like, of course, there were always like those blanket prayers, like, God, forgive anything that I was unaware of. And I'm like, that just didn't feel like, if it was that big of a deal, that prayer wasn't enough.
Thank God it.
Like, that's what I always felt. I was like, I always just felt like this tug between like, I heard what I heard what you said here, but I also heard what you said here. And it was constantly like, I really just felt like I was being pulled in so many different directions. And then like in youth, like we had several different youth pastors. Like, we didn't have anybody super consistent.
Yeah.
Like, I had people, the most consistent, I think, was like 2 years. So like, I never got to know anybody. I never got to, you know what I mean? Like, so I didn't even have that leadership that I could go to
Right.
with these questions or concerns.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I don't know.
Wow.
It was a lot, I know.
Yeah, no,
So
it's
what you were saying, like thinking back to that girl, what do you think in that moment would have helped her?
Oh,
Like if you could go back and say something to her right now.
like, hey, like that feeling of being pulled in so many different directions and feeling like that catch-22, like that's not actually God, right? Like you're learning a lot of things from people that don't have the full picture.
Mm.
So like you're getting a very limited view and you are okay. Like, hey, you don't have to, like, God is not one to be scared of. Like, none of this is to be scared of. Like, none of it. Absolutely none of it. Like, there's a lot of things that have a perceived, like, meaning. There's a lot of things that have a perceived meaning and, like, what it looks like, but that's not necessarily the case, right? Like, and of course, I'm like going, let me show you.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I really want to do is like, hey, let me show you where this isn't the case. But I think that's like the biggest thing is like, you have a bunch of teachers doing the best that they can with what they were taught.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know that there's other sources to go look for different theological views, different, you know, like, I don't think it's ever taught that, hey, this theology that you're about to teach, that I'm teaching you right now, that you're going to teach impressionable teenagers is only 100 years old, but do your best.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think they're ever shown that, right?
Yeah.
Like, because there's theological views that are 2,000 years old and 10 years old and like everything in between, and
Right.
all of it's being taught somewhere.
right.
And so,
As the truth.
yes, and it's all sold as the same, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
How do you think her knowing that would have changed her out, like what she had to go through or what she went through, decisions she made?
knowing where she was, I don't know that it would have been the most helpful, right? Because it would have been a really lonely place because everyone
Yeah.
would have told her she was wrong.
Yeah.
And like, we all know, like, after a couple spicy Facebook posts of me being told I was wrong and me being told I was wrong, I was like, no, like, don't quit telling me I'm wrong and ask me why.
Yeah.
Ask me why I believe what I believe, you know? And so, like, people telling me I was wrong would have definitely made me isolate even more. So I don't know that that even would have been like the most beneficial place. And Berlin, I know in some of your story, you were talking about like, I didn't feel like I was supposed to go look at the Buddhist thing, like go look for things in the Buddhist religion, but the monks were at peace. And I'm like, like running from church and running from God, there was peace there.
Yeah.
And so it did lead to me not going to church anymore, because if I'm going to go and just be put back into this debilitating state of fear, why?
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. What were, besides that, like, was there anything else growing up in being, you know, Baptist and in that culture that really like impacted you as a teenager?
So I do think they were actually really good and intentional with the youth. They always had events. They always had things like we were always going and doing and experiencing. And yes, we've done church camp and we did concerts and we did a lot of these things and the lock-ins and all the fun, crazy, like messy games. And they always did really good about getting us involved. But also, I really do feel like we had actual experiences and encounters with God in those places. So,
oh wow,
because I do remember before I was even old enough to be in youth group, I think I was in 5th grade. So maybe this was 97. Like when we were talking about what was so good about 97, I was like, I don't know, it just was. Maybe this is around that time
before the episode we were talking about that.
But like, I don't know. That now that I think about it, I was like, I think that was about 97. But like, I remember watching the youth group have an encounter and just completely flip, like be like so on fire. That was the first time I saw people actually passionate and caring about worshiping God.
Wow.
Because every week it was just like singing the hymns in a monotone, like under your breath so no one could hear you. Like there was no passion. And that was the first like example of what it looks like to passionately like worship Jesus.
What happened? What was
I
it?
can't remember. Like, I think they went to like I don't know if it was like a conference. I don't think it was like a youth camp.
Mhm.
I can't remember quite what I don't remember.
Okay.
But I was going, I can't wait to get there. Because I'm like,
Mhm.
I want that. Because I'm like, there's something to be excited about. And I've yet to find it.
Mhm.
Because I'm like, I'm sitting there with my Precious Moments King James Bible. And I'm like,
We all had one. I mean, I
but
had
I'm
one
like,
when I was Amish.
what kid can read King James? I'm like, no wonder I think God is so boring. I'm like, I don't know how to talk to him if this is how he talks. Right.
Yeah.
Which is so funny. And like, hey, God talks like you. In the sarcasm, in the jokes,
Mhm.
in the like seriousness, like he does it all, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's
he's
true.
multi-talented.
Yeah. Well, he made you to communicate a certain
Yeah.
way, so why would he not communicate that way to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's so funny. Like it took being much older going, oh yeah, I can be sarcastic. And like, have you ever heard God laugh at you?
Yes.
Have you ever heard God laugh at you? That is one of the like, listen, I always love telling a good joke and getting a laugh.
Mhm.
There's nothing better than God going, yep. There's nothing better than that for me. I'm like, yes, I got him.
He's heard a lot of jokes.
I know.
So-
Yeah.
I mean, he's been here for a while.
Yeah.
So,
I'm pretty sure he probably knows all the jokes in the book, but not your jokes.
I know they're new.
Yeah.
So are there any like final pieces that you want to share about like things that were impactful as a teenager or changes or even some like encouragement, I would say, for parents of teenagers in that moment?
Or teenagers
Because
themselves.
Teenagers themselves that are listening. Like what would be, is there any last things that you want to share on that?
So we did mention this in another episode, but like if they're old enough to have the questions, they're old enough to have an answer. And so your teenagers are going to have questions that you have no idea.
Mhm.
You have no idea because that's not the like, yes, they're your child, but you're still not wired the same way. So they're going to have questions, and don't treat that as you shouldn't ask that. Because I feel like sometimes
Maybe
questions were
ask
always
them.
asked that.
Maybe ask them if they have questions.
Yes.
I think that's a big thing
Open
too.
the opportunity.
Yeah.
And
like-
be willing to get awkward. Because it's
Yeah.
not really awkward. People have just told you it's awkward.
Mhm.
And so we're just like operating in a lie in that. I
Right.
won't get on that soapbox. But but like opening up the floor to have the questions.
Mhm.
And when you don't know, use it as an opportunity for everyone to grow and go on the journey with them. Because while they're still there in your home, it is the safest place to explore all the things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a safe place to explore your relationship with God, explore what you believe, what they believe, right?
Mhm.
And it's not always going to be the same as what you believe,
Right.
and have the grace to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, one last question,
Mhm.
do you have any more questions?
No,
for her?
that's all I've got.
Okay. What do you think your teenage self, who she was, would be proud of you today?
Yeah. I think she'd be proud that I found, sorry.
It's
Ooh,
okay. It's
goodness.
good.
I think she'd be proud that I found freedom,
Mhm.
and I found people that I can be myself with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's always been like, I've never had a community like I do now, like with you guys and just like our whole group.
Mhm.
Like I've never had a place where I could truly be myself and be loved back,
Mm. Mhm.
because I do know I love hard, and I do know that I love different. And so finding that, I feel like for her would be a sigh of relief of like, hey, it's coming.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's a big
I didn't know I was
deal.
gonna cry, guys.
Hey, that's when you know it's good. I mean, it's good anyway.
Yeah.
But like, that's why we wanted to ask you those questions,
Yeah.
because, even for other teenagers who are listening, or, parents of teenagers, like, this is one teenager's story. And I'm sure,
And I'm not the only one who's
I was
felt this
gonna
way.
say.
I'm not the
Mhm.
only one who has had a panic attack because of something they've heard in church.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And that's just a good sign that it's really bad teaching if it makes you have panic attacks. Like,
Yes, and I
That's your
didn't have
first
that
thing.
frame of reference. I didn't know
Right.
that you could have bad teaching. I
Yeah.
thought you just
Yeah.
had to accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was black and white. You either take it or you leave it.
Mhm.
And that's why I was like, leaving it felt like the safest option because I knew what the result was.
yeah, at least you could anticipate or expect that.
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
bank on that, as bad as it was.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. That's why I was like, they were like, are you ready to share it? I'm like, I think so. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm fine. Like I've written it, but I don't think I've ever actually like verbalized it. So I even got more out of it.
Yeah.
So-
There's power in both, like
Yeah.
writing and speaking it out, because your voice carries a frequency. And even in that, you carry, freedom for people who've gone through the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
that's awesome.
That's good.
Any final words you want to?
I don't
Share?
think so. You just like your questions are valid, and that check in your spirit or that feeling of fear is an open invitation to deeper revelation and deeper relationship. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, guys. Well, that's it. Thank you so much, Leslie, for sharing your story.
Yeah,
we
of
love you
course.
and appreciate you so much.
Thanks.
I'm glad you're part of the Butter Churn Girls.
Me too.
All right, guys. If you liked this episode, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening on, whatever platform. And if you have had an experience of like your teenage years, where you're like, hey, I'd love for you to share. I want you guys to know my story. Feel free to like send it in, and we'll like share your stories on the podcast. We won't give your name if you don't want us to. That can obviously just stay anonymous or whatever. But there's power in your story being told and your testimony. And if you want us to like share your story and even talk about it and just like, hey, wow, that's crazy, or comment on it or whatever, send it to us. Whether it's email, if you want to do it with email, it's thebutterchurngirls@gmail.com, or
DM us on one of our
Yeah.
socials.
yeah. All right. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye, guys.
See ya.
See ya.